What up, sports fans? Waxon Wednesday, Waxman, top level, let two guys talk sports. Let's go. All right, I'm gonna start things off by reacting to some rumors I've heard. I will say this: nothing confirmed. Okay, nothing's official about this, but word on the block is Joe Burrow is unhappy with the way things are unfolding in Cincinnati, and supposedly, if they miss the playoffs again this upcoming season or miss the playoffs for the third year in a row, Joe Burrow will seek a trade from the Cincinnati Bengals. Of course, nothing official on this, okay? We don't know. You'd have to talk to Joe Burrow about this, which, okay, nobody's allowed to get that close to like an athlete of that count. To a NFL type athlete, okay? We never get that close to those guys. Okay, they don't spread the word on a lot. But supposedly, that's the rumor. So, again, only rumors. But if that is actually the case, okay, let's be real. This doesn't surprise me. Sadly, the Cincinnati Bengals have a history of cheap ownership. Ever since Paul Brown died and since Mike Brown took over the Bengals, I'm going to be honest, he's been kind of a cheapstake, okay? Okay, to be honest, he doesn't spend enough money to build championship contending teams. And although the Cincinnati Bengals team made it to the Super Bowl back in the year 2020, when the Super Bowl was in Los Angeles, okay? For the first time in a long, long time. Okay, the Bengals were there to face off with the Rams. That was a really, really fantastic Bengals team. Of course, they surprised a lot of people, too. Now we've been wondering when this Bengals team is going to get back, and they haven't gotten back a few seasons later. Let alone, in the last two seasons, they've missed the playoffs. And one of the big reasons is the defense, okay? The defense has not helped. Okay, Joe Burrow, he's not perfect by any means of the stretch, but he is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, okay? And he's a quarterback anyone would love to have on their team, you know? Especially like if you're a fan of a quarterback needing team and he was on the market, you would want him instantly. You'd want your team to sign him. All right, he balled out at the end of last year. And I think the Bengals could have won a lot more games if they had any sort of defense. But their defense last year was just terrible. Ugh. It was that bad. And part of the reason for that is that the Bengals, they've lost talent on defense and haven't replaced it through free agency or the draft. And the management for the Bengals is to blame here, all right? They need to do a better job building up that defense this off. And I hope they've done that this offseason. I hope they do that in the draft because to get to the playoffs and contend for Super Bowls, you need to have a solid defense at the very least. You got to have a good defense or one that can get you to the postseason and all that. The defense that Joe Burrow has, or the defense that the Cincinnati Bengals had, it's nowhere near good enough to get to the playoffs by any means of the stretch. And you know what? You can say that falls on Zach Taylor, the coach, but you know what? That also falls on the general manager and Mike Brown, as we mentioned, who's the owner of the Bengals, because they're just not spending enough money to build a defense. And I know what some of you are thinking. Okay, Joe Burrow took a lot of money from the Bengals. I mean, they had to pay him. But you know what? So did Jamar Chase, okay? Both Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow got paid, all right? But the bottom line is it's not just through free agency, but getting solid guys in the draft. The Bengals just have not done that yet. Or they just have not had defensemen that have stepped up to help this team win those close games. A lot of time, like they could have for example, they could have beaten the Ravens last season, but the defense just couldn't close in the end, and they puts a lot of pressure on Joe Burrow to go and win the games. And granted, okay, being under pressure is what makes a quarterback great. But even the greatest quarterbacks cannot do it alone, all right? So, case in point here, all right, if Joe Burrow is really frustrated with how things are going in Cincinnati, okay, doesn't surprise me, all right? Because Cincinnati, like, they'll have really good teams down the road, but they just have not been able to sustain that success. And in terms of longevity success, they just have not been able to sustain it. And a lot of it is due to sometimes whether they hold on to a coach too long, like Marvin Lewis, okay? Very good NFL coach, but the Bengals held on to him for way too long. And I'm worried they're doing the same thing with Taylor. I think they're holding on to him maybe a bit too long. You could have made the case that he probably should have been fired last year. In fact, I think he should have, but you know what? Not my call to make. So, again, we don't know what's going on between Joe Burrow and the Bengals, if anything. Okay, it could just be, news talk, all that stuff. I mean, I can understand him being frustrated, especially after this Bengals team went to the Super Bowl not too long ago. All right, there's been a lot of issues with the Bengals at this moment, but most so just surrounding Joe Burrow with talent on the defensive side of things. I mean, plenty of talent on the offense. Of course, they've also not done a good job building that offensive line. That's another thing. Burrow has had to run for his life a lot of times in a lot of NFL games. So the Bengals are, in a way, are neglecting the things that they need the most to go not only get back to the Super Bowl but to win it, or not only get back to the playoffs but to get to the Super Bowl, however you want to put it. The bottom line is, look, this could be a really critical, regardless of the rumors, this is a critical year upcoming for the Bengals. They got to get back to the playoffs. They got a team that's good enough to be in the playoffs, but they need to put it all together. Okay, I hope they focused heavily on the defensive side because they need a lot of pieces on defense. And, all right, Joe Burrow, all right, starts the season slow, admittedly, but as he gets going, man, does he get going. Man, does he get red hot. And, man, can he ball out when this team needs him most. But he can't do it all for the Bengals. All right? Bengals, the organization as a whole, needs to put it all together for him. Or they could wind up losing, potentially, an NFL legend to another team. All right? The Bengals, they got a quarterback on their hands who could be a Hall of Famer. It would shock me if Joe Burrow's not a Hall of Famer when his career is all said and done. Because he puts up some great, great numbers. No doubt about that. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Top 5, in my opinion. But right now, he is on a team that just feels like it's stuck in neutral. Like they just, for one reason or another, they just can't get to the playoffs. So, again, the rumors, okay, we don't know if they're true or not. But it wouldn't surprise me if Joe Burrow is actually frustrated with the way things are going in Cincinnati. And if things continue down this road, if they miss the playoffs again, it would not surprise me if he asks for a trade from Cincinnati. But we'll see if the Bengals decide to grant him that request. But if you're Cincinnati, you got to do everything you can, regardless of what he says. Keep your all-pro quarterback happy. Keep your stud of a quarterback happy. All right, give him what he needs, and he'll deliver for you. Okay, this Bengals team, I've seen what they're capable of when they're playing to their best. I mean, they almost won the Super Bowl a few years back. They almost. This was back in 2022, by the way. They almost won the Super Bowl in Los Angeles. Just came up short. But this Bengals team, if they can put it all together, make the playoffs, make some noise there, then I could see Joe Burrow staying. But if not, it would not surprise me if he and Jamar Chase seek a trade, because both of them have been frustrated with how things are going with the bank. Jamar Chase especially has shown forth his frustrations with this Bengals organization. So, again, just word on the block, but it's just something I picked up on. So, time will tell. We'll see. Can the Bengals please Joe Burrow? All right, speaking of the NFL and free agency, okay, I thought I'd talk more about what the Bears are doing in free agency, and you know what? I got to give Ryan Poles a lot of credit. This might go down as his best free agency ever. For once in his life, and finally, it is about damn time a general manager for the Chicago Bears actually gets what the team needs, goes out and signs the kind of free agents that the Chicago Bears need. They are doing that. Ryan Poles, good job so far. You're finally getting the players that we need. I mentioned 2 offensive linemen, Jonah Jackson from the Rams and Joe Thuney with the Kansas City Chiefs. All right, both acquired in a trades. Both very good offensive linemen Those are upgrades for the Bears' offensive line. That's exactly what the Bears need. And in addition, they've also added guys, tight end Durham Smith, who could be a really good blocking tight end. Grady Jarrett, who's a defensive lineman from the Falcons. They add him, so bolster up that defensive line. We needed that too. So really, looking at the free agents that the Bears have signed, I'm actually pleased. The Bears are getting exactly what they need. You need offensive linemen or tight ends that can block, which, in terms of the tight end that I mentioned, let's see if I can go back real quick. That is Durham Smith, or Smythe. He's a tight end, but you know what? People will say, but the Bears don't need a tight end. But here's the thing. If he's a blocking tight end, then that's a good addition for the Bears, because we need any kind of block. The Bears could use any kind of blocking going into this next season. Any kind of blocking will do, because they had all sorts of problems with that last season. Caleb Williams, he was the most sacked quarterback in the NFL last year, because the Bears' offensive line struggled a lot. I mean, Williams held on to the ball a little too long in a lot of situations, but in most of these situations, the offensive line just could not buy him time to throw, even just a second. So, getting these offensive linemen, along with a blocking tight end, I like that for the Chicago Bears, all right? And then, of course, they bolster up that D-line with Grady Jarrett, okay? Any piece you can add to the defensive line helps. Because here's the thing. The Bears are good. I like the Bears' quarterbacks going into the next season, but the defensive line is going to be a bit of a concern. And that was last season. We struggled a bit on that defensive line and getting pressure. So now, and Montez Sweat, he's a great football player. Just got to get someone to go with him. Or add a piece to play alongside Montez Sweat to help him on the defensive line. So this is a good step forward there. But also, what I really like about the Bears free agency, is how it's gonna affect the Bears draft. The Bears have the number 10 pick in the 2025 NFL draft, which will be in Green Bay. And you know what? With the Bears signing a lot of offensive linemen in free agency, the door is wide open at number 10. And what I mean by that is, the Bears, they could do anything they want at number 10. From what I'm now hearing, and I can believe this, offensive line may not be the big concern with the number 10 pick. Because they signed those two very good offensive linemen from the Rams and the Chiefs. Drafting an O-lineman at number 10 might not be the focus for the Chicago Bears. And I can't hate that. All right? You know, that opens the door for a lot of possibilities. Maybe the Bears go defensive line at number 10. I wouldn't hate that. Or, you know what? Here's the thing. Here's something else I want you folks to keep in mind. There is a running back that the Bears are looking at. Here's a name to keep an eye on. Ashton Jeanty, or JT, or however you say it. Ashton Jeanty, we'll go with that. That is a guy, that running back has a lot of potential. Yes, he's small in size, but he's elusive, he's fast, athletic. And you know what? At number 10 for the Bears, he could be an option. And honestly, I don't think I'd hate that all that much. Just ask the Detroit Lions. They drafted Jahmyr Gibbs, I believe, at number 14 in one particular draft. The season, not this past season, but the draft before Detroit, like the draft in Detroit. They drafted Jahmyr Gibbs in the first round, and pretty early, and that actually worked out beautifully for the Lions because now they got an anchor at running back, a powerful anchor at running back in Jahmyr Gibbs. Or, excuse me, I'm going to smack my face. Jahmyr Gibbs. God bless America, Jay. Come on, man. Jahmyr Gibbs. Sorry. Jahmyr Gibbs. The Lions drafting him early in the first round, that was a great move for that franchise. It worked out beautifully for them. And now they've got themselves a powerful running back in Jahmyr Gibbs, and he is leading the way for that Lions team. And he's a key piece for them in offense. So getting a running back like the Boise State running back if Chicago goes with that Boise State running back, I won't hate that, especially if it pans out, because that guy could add a lot to this Bears running game. Like, the Bears had a solid running game last year, but they didn't have a whole lot of explosive plays last year. Not blaming the running backs like DeAndre Swift or Roschon Johnson. Those are good guys, good running backs. A lot of that also was due to the offensive line having struggles, but you guys see what I'm getting at now. The Bears, now that they've signed quite a few key pieces at offensive line, the door at number 10 is wide open. They could do a lot of different things. Defensive line, maybe cornerback, or get that mighty fine running back out of Boise State. One never knows at this point. It's a mystery right now who they're going to get, but you know what? That's not a bad thing. The Bears have options. You know, I wouldn't be surprised. And I mean, they could draft an O-lineman at number 10, but here's the thing. That is something that has not really worked out for the Bears in the past. So I could see them not drafting an O-lineman at number 10 and instead getting the best possible player at number 10 or trading down. Either way, lots of options for the Bears, and all due to the fact that Ryan Poles is having a fantastic free agency, because getting those two offensive linemen in Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson, great additions, much needed additions for the Bears, and opens up the door to do a lot of different things with the number 10 overall pick. So, kudos to you, Ryan Poles. Keep up the good work. All right. And finally, I thought today we'd talk about some bracketology. And I thought today I'd give you guys some advice on what to do. Or here are 3 tips in my mind that I'd like you guys to know about before you make a bracket. 3 tips that will help you. All right, so you want to try and shoot for the perfect bracket, which is damn near impossible, or just extremely difficult. It's almost impossible to make a perfect bracket. But if you're shooting to try and make that perfect bracket, all right, here's 3 tips I'd recommend for all you who are filling out a bracket this upcoming season. First thing I want you guys to keep in mind. Not all the number 1 seeds are going to make it to the Final Four. That almost never happens, all right? There's always going to be 4 number 1 seeds, but usually no more than 2 make it in a single NCAA tournament, from what I've seen. Sometimes you might get 3, but I've never seen all 4 get there. Now, I believe that the most we had... All right, sorry, getting off. The point is, more tournaments than not, at least 2 of the number 1 seeds are going to get knocked out. Some might get knocked out in the first weekend. Others, the second weekend. It can vary. So just something to keep in mind when you're filling out a bracket. Don't go all in on the number 1 seeds, okay? Because not all of them are going to make it. And usually there's at least 1 or 2 number 1 seeds that have glaring flaws going into the tournament. Or they've got... just something to keep in mind, Just ask my Purdue Boilermakers, who got upset by FDU in 2023. We probably should not have been a number 1 seed. Our weaknesses showed in that game. So, and that's the first tip I'm going to give you. Don't bet on all the number 1 seeds, all right? Vary things out. And a big reason that you don't want to bid on all the number 1 seeds leads me to tip number 2 for you, folks. There's always going to be that one region in the bracket, every bracket, there is that one region where chaos ensues. Where just everything just comes crashing down and anyone can come out of that region. In the 2024 NCAA tournament, the region of chaos was the South region. which Houston was the number 1 seed. Lot of upsets in that region. I mean, you had James Madison over Wisconsin, and of course my Oakland Golden Grizzlies taking down Kentucky, who a lot of people had picked for a deep run, but I was skeptical. But there's the thing: there's always going to be that one region where there's going to be a lot of upsets, and a lot of times there's all these upsets, or there's this avalanche of upsets because the number 1 seed goes down in the second game of that region, or in their second game of that region, or in the say the Sweet 16, the number 1 seed. A lot of times it starts with that number 1 seed, or that region becomes chaotic because the number 1 seed, maybe whether they lose or not, they don't look as good as they're advertised. Or you got other teams like in that region who come in red hot, like they look like some of the best teams in the tournament and look poised to make a Final Four run, but they get a bad matchup, and they get exposed in that their first game or the second one to follow. So this is just me trying to point out to you, case in point, there's always going to be one region where there's an avalanche, where there's going to be a lot of teams that look poised to make a run, and then they all get upset or they lose early and bow out early. Last year, case in point, last year's South region, in which Kentucky and Wisconsin, who a lot of people had pegged as like dark horses for like the Final Four, got eliminated early. It's going to happen. There's always going to be that one region. I also will mention there's always the region of death. And last year that was the East. So that's something else to keep in mind. But keep in mind, each region is different. All right? Each one has its different characteristics, different paths, personalities, different styles of basketball. But one consistent that I've seen in every tournament, there's always that one region where glorious chaos ensues, and that all the high seeds are taken out one by one like an avalanche. So something to keep in mind. And finally, my third tip for all those who are filling out a bracket. If you want to be as accurate as possible with predicting not only who could go to the Final Four, but who could win it all, you always want to look at one specific metric, and that is the KenPom ranking in terms of offense and defense. The national champion each year has had a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense. There's a balance, cohesion, great balance between offense and defense. If a particular team is top 10 in both offense and defense, that's a team that you probably want to bet on as a national champ. Not only as a team that can go all the way to the Final Four, but make it to the national championship and potentially win it. So those are some things to keep an eye on. If you got a team, and for example, if you got a team that's like, say, top 10 in offense, but not in the top 50 in terms of defense, that's a team that could end up going home early, or probably won't make a Final Four run because eventually some of their issues are going to come to light. You could have a team top 10 offense or a top 25 defense, or top 25 offense or top 10 defense. Could still make a deep run there. But, case in point, teams that make a deep run have great balance on both sides of the court, both on offense and defense. So that's something to keep very much in mind. So, teams that are great in, great on one side of the court, but maybe not as good as in the other side, those are teams that you might want to think twice about before picking them to go far. Because, for example, you could have a great offense, but if your defense you could have a great offense and a struggling defense, but if your offense is not hitting shots in one particular game, and your defense is struggling to help you keep up, that's a bad sign. So, just some things to keep in mind, and these are just 3 tips pretty much that I'm giving to all you bracketeers out there, for those who want to make a bracket for this March Madness. These are just things that I've found, okay? Again, you don't have to take my advice for it, okay? I just thought I'd tell to all you who like March Madness, I thought I'd give you all just a few tips on things to keep in mind when filling out a bracket. Or if you're new to this thing, just trying to help you out here. So, Three tips are: one is don't bid on all the number one seeds making it to the Final Four. Two, there's going to be at least one region that is filled with absolute chaos, and all the high seeds are going to lose. So when you're making your picks, at least keep this in mind and take it and try to fill out one region that you think is going to be absolutely chaotic. And then three, keep in mind the KenPom rankings. Who's got the highest ranked offenses and defense? Who's got that balance? For example, like a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense. If a team has that, they got a good chance of going very, very far. If it's, say, a top 10 offense, but not a top 50 defense, might be a red flag there in terms of making a deep run. So these are just tips that I have for all those out there who are filling out brackets, or if you're new to this bracketology, just trying to help you out in making your picks. Of course, I guess one more tip I'll add: wait till Selection Sunday to fill out your bracket and take a look at all the matchups. Easy thing to do, though. Just gotta play the waiting game. All right, on to this day in sports history, and on this day, the 12th of March, 2020. Oh dear. The 2020 NCAA men's basketball tournament is canceled over concerns of the spread of the COVID-19 virus. First time March Madness is not held since it began in 1939. And the women's tournament is also canceled. I remember this day 5 years ago, and just remember how everything just went quiet and how the world had just changed. Me and Tyler very likely will talk more about where we were at when the COVID-19 virus shut down sports. And also on this day in 2020, the NHL pauses the 2019 to 2020 season due to the COVID-19 pandemic. All right, sports fans, that's all I got for this week's Waxon Wednesday. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to leave comments below or any questions you have. This is Jake Waxman from Two Guys Talk Sports, signing off.